waste your time learning to crochet. I mean, it literally took me 5 hours to create my first sample or sample crocheted square. I thought it would be pretty cool to learn, but I ended up getting the letter C, or rainbow, or semicircle. See, the reason why I'm showing you guys this because I wanted to show you the true breakdown when it comes to learning a new hobby like crochet and how many hours it took for me to learn. Tuesday, I ended up spending 10 minutes on this project because I didn't realize how hard it was to crochet another row as far as trying to get into the next crocheted row. It was quite thick and really hard to get into. You can see how hard it was for me to get into that second row because I was really trying to keep in mind of getting into the whole of the second row and not the first row. You can see how I'm trying to really separate and pull, and you can see how clearly I was trying to define that hole I was trying to get into. Another thing that I didn't realize that was hard was on Wednesday I was gonna really dedicate in finishing this square that I was attempting. And when I was trying to attempt that square, I didn't realize it, but I was kind of bending the crochet row into a curve and I wasn't really holding it steady. I was holding it and just letting it loose, and while letting it loose when I was crocheting, it kind of curved and I was crocheting along that curve and I wasn't trying to go against the gradient. Now you can see here I was trying to create a new row and I really tried to pull and separate the yarns, that way I can make a clear defined third row. And as you can see, I'm going, and it's much more easier and faster once you get the practice in of creating that same pattern of finding the hole and crocheting in and out. But as you can see, I'm still creating that mistake of just letting it loose, and I'm creating that natural curve instead of trying to follow that straight line effect if I were a little bit more stricter in the way I held the crochet. But this is the results that I got. Now I'm going to translate these skills into my next project, which is creating a granny square, or at least I thought I created a granny square. See, this project took a total of 5 hours. On Monday, it took me a whopping 4 hours to get started with my first 2 chains. So I thought it would be easier when I translated to this next project. And it did end up becoming a little bit faster. So what I had to do was take a single chain and make it into a circle. So what I had to do was take at the top of the chain, instead of continuing on with another loop, I would go back into the bottom of the last chain and kind of circle back in with some yarn and create a mini circle and then loop around that circle. So this will create another layer or another chain, but in more of a circle form. This definitely helped when it came to following the pattern. And when I did this design, I also had to do 3 loops. So I had to grab some more yarn and then go through 3 loops, then 2 loops, and then 1 more loop to continue on with the chaining or looping process to create the circle. This helped create a little bit more dimension and create a little better anchor when it came to continuing on the project. But I wanted to make sure I knew how to do this, so I did start over and create this circle again, so that way not only I knew how to do this skill, but I could do it a little bit faster each time. So I did do the same thing, but this time I was continuing on with growing the circle. So not just making it one circle around, but trying to make another layer by going a little bit higher. So I did do the same process, which is going through 3 loops. And it's very important that you gather yarn in the beginning and not forget to gather the yarn, because if you forget to gather the yarn, you'll get 2 loops. And 2 loops could help grow your circle, but it just won't look as clean or as even all the way around. Now once I grew my circle, this is the point where they wanted us to kind of create a square design, and this is the part where we had to turn. So you had to create 3 chains up, so creating like 3 loops, and then you would go back in, grab some more yarn from the back, and you'll still do the same concept, which is to gather 3 and then gather into 2. But you can see I had a little bit more difficulty because I had to go a little higher in the chain, as well as I also had to consider turning. So this is the point when I was supposed to kind of make a square around my circle. And I just wasn't very good at creating cleaner edges because, again, I was kind of leaning into crocheting around the circle, so it was very hard for me to get a very clear defined edge. And doing at this point I decided to just still continue because I just felt like even though it wasn't as even when it came to spacing or creating a very clean edge, I was still trying my best when it came to, I guess, practicing the skill. You can see in that one little edge I was a little bit better when it came to creating a sharper edge to create a square, but still wasn't as good as it should be. You can also see the spacing inside my crochet. It wasn't very even throughout, and that was because, again, I was attempting to create mini squares in a circle, which was quite difficult for me to do. I got like a combination of like triangles, rectangles. It's just kind of awkward and weird. And also another thing I got tripped up on was, again, looping back in and trying to find a clear defined row because of this sections of different circles inside the circle. It was kind of hard to define a clear defined row, so it kind of made it hard to go back in and create like a even row of supposed to be squares but ended up being triangles and mini circles inside my crochet or inside the granny square that I was supposed to make. So you can see the multiple attempts I tried to just go more linear and try to make it into a square. But at this point I was just leaning into the circle-ish effect and decided to go on and try to add in another color. Now you can see here I have a green yarn and I also have gonna be very soon purple yarn. Now this is something that I already had in my supplies, but I will be adding the cost of this as well. So the green yarn, again, is kind of like your standard green acrylic yarn that you can get from Walmart, which would probably be around $4. And the purple yarn that you'll see me integrate very soon is also kind of like your standard purple bundle yarn. That would also be equivalent to maybe $4 at a craft store or maybe at a big box store. So also the timing when it came to adding this row, I thought it would be pretty hard. I ended up creating like a mini loop, so it's kind of like a slip knot, but except I didn't actually tie the knot. I just put that loop around and used a crochet hook to help me loop it inside the pre-existing circle square that I have. And you can see how I'm just gonna loop around and just continue on with the crochet. And if you're wondering how I ended this circle, I just made like a little knot at the bottom as well as at the beginning. So that is how I was able to just secure that circle square. And then now I just add in the purple, or you could say lilac, and just continue on with the crocheting. Now I'm going to show you the result of what I was supposed to get and then the end result of what I did get. But you won't see the end result here in this video. You actually see the end result at the next video of how this actually looks like and to see if I can continue to build. Now, one unique thing about this pattern was that I could add multiple colors, but I decided to stick with 2 colors. And this is just a close-up of me really trying to crochet with this new color. I think one thing that I decided to do that was different was just stick with 2 rows. So I didn't try to go higher with like the 3 chain. I think I still continue with the 3 chain method, but it was just more of an attempt to just make it a clean purple row throughout the whole entire granny square technique instead of trying to make different designs. I did space a little bit throughout just so that way it could be a little bit faster, because at this point I just felt like I wanted to finish and try to create a good beginner granny square. And through that process I was able to not only know my skill level but also really define how I can make much more linear or better edges when it comes to crocheting. So you're going to see that in the next video as well. This took a total of 4 hours, 4 to 5 hours, and that is the end of the project.